Good evening and welcome to the 1154th regular meeting and public hearing of the Livonia City Planning Commission. I wish to inform all interested persons in the audience that for petitions on tonight's agenda, which involve a question of zoning, the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the City Council, and the City Council, after holding their own public hearing, will make the final determination as to whether a petition is approved or denied. The Planning Commission holds the only public hearing on requests for preliminary plats and/or vacating petitions. The Commission's recommendation is forwarded to the City Council for the final determination as to whether the petition is accepted or rejected. If a petition is requesting a waiver of use or a site plan and is denied tonight, the petitioner will have 10 days in which to appeal the decision in writing to City Council. Resolutions adopted by the City Planning Commission become effective 7 days after the date of adoption. The Planning Commission and professional staff have reviewed each of these petitions upon their filing. Staff has furnished the Commission with both approving and denying resolutions, which the Commission may or may not use depending on the outcome of the proceedings tonight. If the Secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mrs. McHugh.
Here.
Mr. Bonjero.
Here.
Mr. Long is going to be late. Caremagno is here. Chairman Wilshaw.
Is here. And also with us tonight we have Mark Tormina and Stephanie Reese from our Planning Department. And again, I just want to remind folks in the audience with each of these items on our agenda, we will first hear from our planning staff with background information. We'll ask the petitioner then to come forward and speak to the item. And then we'll also have an opportunity for anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak for or against the item to also come forward tonight. So with that, if our secretary is ready, we'll start with number 1 on our public hearing agenda.
Petition 2019-12-01-08 submitted by Gary Bloom pursuant to section 23.01 of the City of Livonia zoning ordinance number 543 as amended, requesting to rezone the property at 39040 7 Mile Road, located on the north side of 7 Mile between the I-275-96 Expressway and Haggerty Road in the southwest quarter of Section 6 from M1 Light Manufacturing to Office Services.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Tormina.
Thank you. Again, this is a request to rezone property from M1 to OS. This property is located on the north side of 7 Mile Road. It's just west of the I-275 Expressway. The property measures roughly 0.6 of an acre and includes 160 feet of frontage on 7 Mile by an average depth of 170 feet. This is the location of the historical Orson Everett House. The original home is identified by historians as a Queen Anne cottage style structure that was built in 1899. The entire site is registered locally as a historic resource. The house is also on the National Register of Historic Places. In 1967, the zoning of the property, along with much of the surrounding acreage, changed from RUF, Rural Urban Farm, to M1 Light Manufacturing, and that was per the recommendation of the Planning Commission back then. In the late 1970s, the house was converted to a law office and has remained that way ever since. The structure is 1.5 stories. It has an area of about 2,600 square feet. There is a garage and gravel parking located at the rear of the property. A single drive off of 7 Mile Road serves as ingress and egress to the property. Looking at the surrounding land uses and zoning, immediately to the north is the Pentagon Center Entertainment Campus that is zoned C2 General Business. To the east is the future site of the Beaumont Outpatient Care Center. This is a 35-acre parcel that is zoned PO, Professional Office. Directly to the south across 7 Mile Road is the Jeffress Center that is part of the Schoolcraft College campus, as well as 7 Mile Crossing, which is an office complex zoned PO, Professional Office, and Andiamo Restaurant, which is C2 General Business. And then immediately to the west is the Macaroni Grill, also zoned C2 General Business. The purpose of the rezoning, if the petitioner is successful in rezoning the property, he intends to sell it to an interested party who would repurpose the main building as a massage establishment. Any improvements or alterations to the site or those that would affect the exterior appearance of the building, including signage, is going to require the review and approval of the Historic Preservation Commission. The master plan, Livonia Vision 21, identifies this area as corridor commercial, which does support the proposed change of zoning. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll read out the correspondence.
Yes, please.
We have a letter dated December 19th from our engineering division, and it reads, in accordance with your request, the engineering division has reviewed the above referenced petition. We have no objections to the proposed rezoning at this time. The existing parcel is assigned the address of 390407 Mile Road. The existing parcel is currently serviced by public water main and sanitary sewer. The information submitted does not show proposed alterations for the utility services, so it does not appear that there will be any impacts to the existing systems. It should be noted that should the developer need to do any work within the 7 Mile Road right-of-way, permits will need to be obtained from the Wayne County Department of Public Services. That letter is signed by David Lear, Assistant City Engineer. We have another letter dated December 19th coming from our Department of Finance saying that they have no objections as there are no outstanding amounts receivable, general or water and sewer, and that letter is signed by Connie Compula. And then lastly, a letter from our Office of the City Treasurer, signed by Linda Scheel, dated December 23rd, also indicating that they have no objections due to the fact that there are no taxes due. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Toromina. Do we have any questions for our planning staff? Doesn't look like we have any for our staff. Thank you. Is the petitioner here? Oh, yes. Can you please come forward? Good evening, Mr. Bloom.
Hello,
We ask that you start with your name and address for our record.
my name is Gary M. Bloom, and my address is 2274 Lockland Lane, West Bloomfield, which is on Union Lake, and I also own the building at 390407 Mile Road in Livonia.
Very good. Thank you for coming tonight, Mr. Bloom. Is there
Thank you.
anything else that you wanted to add to your rezoning request beyond what?
I can't, I no longer can practice law because I had a brain operation on October 8th, and I think I told you that at the last meeting, at the last whatever session. And I'm hopefully that I can sell the building to the man that's here, in Michael Allman, and hopefully I can sell it.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if we have any questions for you.
Okay.
And again, I just want to remind both my fellow commissioners and the folks in the audience that we are dealing with a zoning request tonight. So it will be limited discussion about the use of the property in terms of any specific changes to it. But really, we're looking at the zoning and is this zoning request appropriate for that area. So with that, is there any questions for Mr. Bloom? No questions for the petitioner? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against this item? I don't see anyone else coming forward for this item. So with that, we can close the public hearing and a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bonjero.
I'd like to make an approving resolution. Sure. That the request to rezone the property at 390407 Mile Road from M1 to OS is hereby approved, subject to city council approval for the following reasons. One, that a change of zoning to OS office services is compatible to and in harmony with the surrounding land uses and zoning districts in the area. Two, that the proposed change of zoning is consistent with the developing character of the area. Three, that the proposed change of zoning would more accurately correspond to the location and size of the property. And number four, that the proposed zoning change is supported by the future land use plan, which recommends corridor commercial use in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Bonjero. Do we have support for that motion?
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Bonjero, supported by Mr. Caramagno. Also, if the record can reflect that Mr. Long joined us at 7:10 p.m. Welcome, Mr. Long.
Thank you.
And we have a motion on the floor approving the rezoning request. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Long.
since I was joining late and I missed the presentation, were there any substantial changes from what we looked at the study meeting?
There were none.
Okay, thank you.
And if there's any other discussion on the motion? If there's no other discussion, then if the secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mr. Bonjero.
Aye.
Caremagna votes aye. Mrs. McHugh?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Chairman Wilshaw?
Votes aye, motion passes. And that will go on to city council with an approving recommendation. And then we'll expect to probably see someone come back in regards to any site plan or any other changes to the property. So thank you very much for coming. And if the secretary is ready, we'll now move to item number 2 on our agenda under miscellaneous items.
Petition 2019-01-08-01, submitted by Tom Kelly, Vice President of 18th Street Development LLC, and Connie O'Malley, President of Outpatient Services, on behalf of Beaumont, requesting approval to revise the site plan approved by City Council on July 22nd, 2019, involving the construction of a professional medical office building at 39,000 7 Mile Road, located on the north side of 7 Mile Road between the I-275-96 Expressway and Haggerty Road in the southwest quarter of Section 6.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Tormini, I think we're in the same neighborhood, right?
Property right adjacent to the item on the previous petition. This is a request to revise a site plan that was approved by City Council on July 22nd of last year. It's located on the north side of 7 Mile Road between the I-275, I-96 Expressway and Haggerty Road. This is a 35-acre parcel. The approval back in July involved the construction of a professional medical office building, the primary use of which will be an outpatient care center for Beaumont Health. Approved as a 4-story building that will replace the existing office and industrial building, which is scheduled to be demolished. The proposed revisions to the plan this evening do not affect the design, location, or the function of the building. The current request involves changes only to how the access is provided to the site. So the approved site plan shows a new service road on the east side of the property connecting to Haggerty via CBS Fox Drive, which is on the north side of the building, and to 7 Mile Road at the south side. That would be via the signalized drive that is located at the Pentagon Center Entertainment Campus. So that's the design that was approved by City Council on July 22nd. The approved plan removed the existing unsignalized driveway at 7 Mile Road, relying instead on a connection to the private drive that would require an access agreement with the Pentagon Association. Unfortunately, the petitioner and the association were unable to reach an agreement, prompting additional traffic studies and the development of a suitable alternative. The current plan eliminates the connection through the association property and instead relies on the existing site driveway on 7 Mile Road. This driveway is located approximately 250 feet east of the existing signalized intersection. It was installed as part of the initial development of the property and served as the main point of ingress and egress for the 2 previous businesses, which were Technicolor and more recently A123. Preliminarily, Wayne County has agreed to the installation of a new traffic signal at the existing drive, which will be synchronized to operate in conjunction with the other traffic signals along 7 Mile and Haggerty. Left turns into the site from 7 Mile Road would be prohibited. Additionally, there would be controller upgrades and timing adjustments to the other signals on Haggerty and 7 Mile Roads. Also, a new signal is being added on Haggerty Road at the Haggerty Square development just south of Costco. And this new signal, in conjunction with the other improvements, including new wayfinding signs, will allow CBX Fox Drive at Haggerty to serve as a better means of ingress and egress to the Beaumont Outpatient Care Center. The traffic consultant is here this evening, as well as representatives of Beaumont and the developer. We do have a couple of items of correspondence, Mr. Chairman. I'll also point out that we do have other video of the modeling that is available should you like to review that this evening. So first letter is from our engineering division. It's dated January 2nd, and it reads, in accordance with your request, the engineering division has reviewed the above referenced petition, and the existing parcel is assigned the address of 39,007 Mile Road. The existing site is currently serviced by public sanitary water and can be extended to the proposed building. Storm sewer detention will need to be provided for any new impervious areas. The submitted drawings do not indicate any proposed utility extension, so we will review those items when full engineering drawings are submitted to this department. The owners have been in contact with this department and are aware of the utility requirements for the proposed development. The proposed paving improvements shown on the submitted drawings indicate the new loop road will utilize the existing exit locations on the 7 Mile and Haggerty roads. As stated in previous discussions with the developer, approvals for these drive locations will need to receive approval from Wayne County, as they are the permitting agent for both roadways. The developer will need to provide traffic numbers to the county to determine whether the proposed project will work with their access management plans. That letter is signed by David Lear, Assistant City Engineer. Next, we have a letter dated January 17th coming from our Department of Finance indicating that they have no objections as there are no outstanding amounts receivable, general or water. That letter is signed by Connie Kumpula, Chief Accountant. And lastly, a letter from the Office of Treasurer dated, updated December 23rd, 2019, indicating no objections to the requests, and that's signed by Linda Shield, Treasurer of the City of Livonia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tormia. Any questions for our planning staff? Questions for our planning staff? The petitioner is here tonight. Please feel free to come forward. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Pleasure to
Welcome.
be in front of you again. Tom Kelly, 1550 Market Street, Denver, Colorado. Just to reiterate what we discussed last night or last week, 18th Street is the developer of the project. We're partnered with Beaumont Health. We are going to develop it. Beaumont owns the land. We'll be doing a long-term ground lease on the land. Just to give you a little context of who we are. We wanted to go through a brief presentation, just give a little additional context as to the iterations of the site plans that we've put in front of you in the past and what led us to where we are today. To help me do this presentation, I'm going to first hand it over to Brian Wickersham. He's the Director of Ambulatory Expansion at Beaumont Health.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Wickersham.
Good evening, Brian Wickersham, 26901 Beaumont Boulevard, Southfield, Michigan. Mark, I don't know, do we have the presentation, or do the commissioners have it in front of them?
I will go to that shortly.
Okay. I'll start just speaking to some of the introduction that we were going to talk through. Mark had already showed you, I guess, our previous approved site plans and then what we're submitting today. Just to briefly reiterate what we went through last week during the study session is we've gone through a very thorough, detailed process that was really based on feedback that we heard in this room about a year ago, this time when we first presented this project. And we heard a few different public comments coming forward that were concerned about traffic. So prior to the Planning Commission or City Council actually requiring us to solve for that, we wanted to go out and solve for it ahead of time, so we were submitting something that we felt would be reasonable and approved. When we first went through the site plan exercise, our path was to connect through the historical home property, which was the very initial site plan that we submitted. Secondly, we ended up wanting to go through the Pentagon Association. That was just due to, I think, a more favorable outcome for both us and the Historical Preservation Commission. Had we worked something out in terms of the historical status of that property, we still would have required an access agreement with the Pentagon Association, who manages that private roadway. And we come to realize after we had agreed to them in terms of site plan that that was still an issue where we just weren't going to be able to see eye to eye with one another. So what we did, which I think is unique to developments of this size, is as opposed to just looking at our particular development, and Mark, you could advance just a couple slides, even one more, we really focused on what else is going around with the neighboring developments. Because when we met with Wayne County to better understand their opinion of this area, we learned, and I found out that some at the city have learned as well, that there's actually already been permitted new traffic signals coming in at Haggerty Square, just to the north of us, at the Chick-fil-A development, a little bit further north of that, and then just west of 7 Mile Road at Pearson at the U of M development. So what we wanted to do was, as opposed to just looking at our site and what our impact would be, was gather all of the traffic studies of our neighboring developments, including the new St. Joe's development to the south of us and the previous referenced developments to the north and to the west. We engaged our traffic consultant to really take a comprehensive look at not what is our impact, but what is the impact of all of these various new projects in terms of traffic to the city. And ultimately, through various simulation studies, we're able to come up with a solution that we feel not only mitigates the traffic impact that we'll be bringing to the community, but also improves the existing traffic conditions that would be in place should we do nothing with all the new developments and the signalization coming from those respective properties. So the next slide will talk a little bit about what we plan to do, or what our proposal is suggesting. And that includes upgrading and funding the upgrades to existing signals that are in place, both in front of the Pentagon Association as well as at the intersection of 7 Mile and I-275. And what that will allow us to do is really time the signals, upgrade those signals so the appropriate technology is in place, and time them appropriately for optimal traffic patterns through that area. Any questions thus far? Do you want me to keep going all the way through and then turn it over?
Yeah, I think you can keep going.
Okay. If you go to the next slide, Mark, I'm going to pause and introduce our traffic consultant, who can just give you just a brief synopsis of the technical detail that went into this study.
Great, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Julie Kroll with Fleece and Vandenbrink. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the detailed technology that we use in evaluating our traffic impact studies. So we use Synchro and SimTraffic version 10. This is based on the Highway Capacity Manual 6th edition, which is the most current version of the software available. The next slide after this, hang on one second, Mark. After this shows the SimTraffic modeling. And can you go back one for me? Thank you. So SimTraffic is a modeling software that is a companion software to the Synchro that we use to determine level of service grades that you see. This is the software that actually models that traffic in a simulation so that we can see how is it actually going to be operating, so we can see how any additional mitigation measures that we need to look at. What type of queuing are we going to see? And it takes in a lot of different factors, and we use that in combination with the level of service grades to determine mitigation measures. Mark? So this shows you on the left is what the traffic would look like if we did not do anything. If Beaumont weren't going to come in, not bring the improvements as mitigation measures that we're proposing, but all the other developments that have already been approved come in, that the traffic volumes at this intersection. If we add the mitigation measures that we're proposing, in addition to the traffic from Beaumont, is what you see on the right. I don't know, Mark, if you click on those, do they move? Can you click the right one? Does it move at the same time?
It does.
So the one on the left is basically what would happen if we do nothing, if we walk away. The one on the right, the one that's actually better, is what it would be if we implement the mitigation measures we're proposing with this project with the addition of this development. So we've mitigated not only our impact, but impacts of the other developments that would not necessarily be realized if we weren't coming with this project. So I'm going to let Brian talk a little bit about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think on the next slide, you'll see what is probably most important in terms of really trying to put a measurable to before the Beaumont development to after the Beaumont development. And what this slide is doing is essentially taking levels of service for each of those major intersections. And as you see, out of the 4 major intersections, one of them is remaining at the same level of service, but the other 3 are all improving based on the efforts that we would put in place. Which, you know, I think one of the scariest thoughts for some folks is another traffic signal. But the reality of the situation is without this improvement that we would bring forward, and more importantly, the upgrades to the existing traffic signals that are in place, you're actually worse off without it from a community safety perspective. And that's, again, just hammering home the main point and purpose of this was not just to look at our site, but try to determine what is best for the community with all of the upcoming development in that region, and which is great for the city of Livonia. So the last slide that we'll leave you with, again, is just the change that we're proposing in our site plan that we're bringing forward, that we certainly appreciate the commission's consideration on, and we're here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wickersham. I appreciate the very thorough presentation. Do we have any questions at this point for our petitioner? Mr. Bonjero.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Wickersham, when you do the study, and I mean, it's impressive, it's sure looks like it works. Does the county do their own study? I mean, do they do the same software? I mean, how?
Yeah, so the county engineers are familiar with this software, and when we first met with the county to produce this proposal to them, as they're the approving jurisdiction for traffic signals, the very first thing they asked was, okay, this all looks really good, but let's get our engineer in the room with Julie so that he can really provide a thorough review on it. And that has to take place before they'll go through any sort of approval process. So they did meet their engineer who's familiar with this software, sat shoulder to shoulder with Julie reviewing it prior to making a recommendation to their superiors.
And can you just, again, I know you're gonna dial up the timing on the lights. I think that's what we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Was it going to 80?
Yeah, it's
80
currently set at 80 seconds, and it would go to 100-second intervals,
Okay.
which would greatly improve the throughput. So when one light turns green, you're getting through all the greens as opposed to stopping at each intersection along the way.
And what point are you guys gonna do it at?
We wouldn't, so based on construction schedule in general, and we were actually just talking about this prior to the meeting, but Wayne County will want to do some testing ahead of time. As you may or may not know, our development is going to come to life if everything goes to plan at some point in mid-2021. So we would look to begin the installation probably this year, just so that the appropriate testing could be put in place. But I don't think the signals would necessarily activate until, or at least our signal would activate until our building was ready to open. However, should the improvements be made ahead of time and the technology is there, there's no reason that the community wouldn't be able to reap those benefits prior to us actually opening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonjero. Any other questions for our petitioner? Mr. Long?
Could I speak with Ms. Kroll, please? My question is, can you describe the process? You're an independent traffic consultant
Yes.
who's been retained by Beaumont in order to do this. And a lot of what we're going to decide here is based upon your study. So can you talk about the independence of your organization? Are you, do traffic study organizations, are they licensed? How do we get faith behind your independence in this?
So as an engineer, a licensed engineer, we provide a service to our clients because the city can't provide that service to their clients, so they require the applicants to provide all of their own consultants to provide those services, and traffic is no different. So everything that we do as traffic consultants is also reviewed and has to be approved by the City of Livonia's engineer and Wayne County. So, and in this case, MDOT. So all of our work that we do is not just me saying this, it's also Wayne County and MDOT and the City of Livonia's engineers reviewing the work and saying, yes, it's followed accepted engineering practice, this is ethical, this has been done with all the utmost standard and quality of practice. So it's not just my word against yours, it's all these other engineers who also review my work as peers to make sure that everything I have done is correct.
Okay, thank you. And so to Mr. Bongero's question earlier, Wayne County's not going to come in and hire their own traffic consultants, but they're going to rely on the work that you've done. They're going to check
Absolutely.
and the work that you've done. And because you're an existing traffic consultant company and they recognize that expertise that you guys have.
Yes, so they know, and some communities require me to submit a resume if they're not familiar with my work, but most communities in this area are familiar, so, and Wayne County has reviewed hundreds of my traffic impact studies over the years. I've done quite a few, so.
Correct.
I have over 20 years of experience doing traffic impact studies. I'm a certified professional engineer and a professional traffic operations engineer. So I took the extra certification to get certified in traffic operations as well.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Caremagna?
Are there any pedestrian concerns or bicycle concerns with this configuration?
When we did the counts for pedestrians, we didn't see a high volume of existing pedestrians. I'll let Kendall speak to what type of pedestrian activity they anticipate generated by this site, but as far as existing, there was very few traffic or pedestrians on 7 Mile or Haggerty.
Okay, and the second part of my question will be, is there the ability for the pedestrians to change the timing of these lights by pushing a button or something to cross the street, or are they secondary to the traffic?
So the signals are push button activated, which allows us to have more green time when necessary, but it's really it's not gonna reduce the green time on 7 Mile or Haggerty. It would be on the cross streets. So it would allow more time for pedestrians to cross north-south rather than east-west. There's plenty of time east-west.
South. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions for our petitioner, other representatives? I just have one quick question, which is, what's the plan B? I know you've been talking to Wayne County, and it's likely that they're aiming toward approving this, but in the event that something comes up and they say this isn't going to work, what's your plan B?
Yeah, frankly, this is Plan D that we're on right now.
Right.
And, you know, we'd really have to go back and scratch our heads to try to come up with a better solution. We really strongly feel that just based on all the other developments coming to this, that again, this isn't necessarily our preferred route, but it's the route that we came to, and it just so happens to support the community's efforts as well.
All right, thank you for that answer.
My pleasure.
Any other questions for our petitioner? Is there anyone in the?
Mr. Chair, I've got one more.
Feel free.
So the 100-second green light and the timing of these intersections, does that change at all, or is it like that all week and weekend long? Does it change with the time of day? Is there any plans to modify the timings, for instance, at night, maybe when the hospital's slow and the restaurants are busy? Is there any plans to have that on a timer of any sort? Or as your study indicated, any different traffic patterns on the weekend or at night?
So the way that the cycle length works is like a maximum. So when you don't have any traffic demand on those cross streets, it'll keep going. It'll stay green, right, on 7 Mile. So until somebody pulls up at one of those cross streets, you know, in the middle of the night, we'll probably have them on flash. They'll have a flash schedule set, and that will be based on, you know, traffic volumes. But say on a Saturday afternoon, nobody's coming out of Schoolcraft, it's actuated. So when a car pulls up, it triggers the loops in the road. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, you'll notice them now. They're like wires in the pavement, and it detects a vehicle on top of them, and it triggers a traffic signal to say there's a car sitting here. And so the cycle length is at 100, but it's only running 100 when we're at max, and that's during the peak periods. So during the off-peak, it'll what we call dwell green on the primary street until somebody pulls up on those cross streets, and then it'll trigger, okay, somebody's sitting here, and the next cycle, it'll pick up and allow the cross street to turn green. So you may get a, 100, 200 second cycle of green at some of these signals where you don't have any demand, because there's no reason to make it turn red when there's no cars there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure
Okay.
does. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tormina?
If I could follow up actually on Commissioner Caramagno's question regarding pedestrian crossing. Ms. Kroll, is it my understanding then that these will be outfitted with pedestals that allow pedestrians to activate for crossings? Let's say somebody wants to walk across 7 Mile from the Beaumont facility to the Andiamo restaurant across the street. Will they have the ability to do that safely? And likewise, if I understood you correctly, it won't be much of an issue traveling along the sidewalk northbound and crossing over those drives to get to, let's say, the Macaroni Grill, which is still on the north side, but crossing 7 Mile in both directions. Will that be, will there be provisions for pedestrians to do that?
Yes, Wayne County standard signals require push buttons, and that just allows us to maximize the vehicle throughput when you have very few pedestrians. So in a downtown area, we wouldn't look at push buttons because people would be pushing it all the time. It wouldn't be worth anything. But in low volume pedestrian areas where we want to provide for those pedestrians, but we don't want all the pedestrian min times affecting our green time all the time, too many times, then we use push buttons so that we can maximize vehicle throughput, but also provide for pedestrian crossing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tormina. Any other questions for our petitioner or the representatives? Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this item? For or against? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioners. Glenn Cerny, 18600 Haggerty Road, Schoolcraft College, VP CFO. We've just got a couple pieces of information that we want to provide for the traffic study that we think are just some additions that should probably be taken into account. The first is the ambulatory care facility that U of M will be developing over at Northville Township. That's in construction and drawings, and so that was not part of this study that was involved. The St. Joe's Mercy Elite Sports Center, 75,000 square feet, that's on our campus. That wasn't in this as well. That's going to bring about 2,000 to 3,000 people on Saturdays and Sundays for volleyball tournaments, pickleball tournaments, tennis tournaments, et cetera. And the other piece that wasn't involved in there's a medical office building that says St. Joe's. We also have a surgical center as well. It's 125,000 square feet. So those are pieces that I think the traffic study just needs to catch up on. It's documents that should be a part of the analysis when they're going forward. The other thing we've done is we've just installed on our 7 Mile signal at Schoolcraft. We just installed a protected right turn going out and a protected left coming into the campus. And on the simulation, I didn't see anybody turning into Schoolcraft, and that's not the case. There's a lot of people turning into school. We've got 30,000 students coming into Schoolcraft. So the simulation's got to get that a little bit more corrected. But The other piece I think we want to make sure is as the protected right is going out, we don't think it's good to have them go out and then get stuck at a traffic light that's 200 feet next to where the exit is to go to 275. Right now, we stack up, and that light is working perfectly. The other piece is as you come in coming in from the east, and you're wanting to turn into Schoolcraft or 7 Mile Crossing, getting in the left turn lane, there is a small differential between if you put that light in at the proposed place and our light, there's not a lot of ability to stack, and that's going to be potentially an issue going forward. So we think that should be addressed. Finally, I think in terms of Saturdays and Sundays, we are going to be pretty full. We're full right now, but we're going to be a lot more attendance because not only the Sports Dome, but now that facility that we're talking about at the Mercy Elite, that'll be open up in August. And so we'll potentially have between 2,000 to 3,000 people along with classes. We do hold classes on, believe it or not, on Saturdays and Sundays. We're a 365, 7-day-a-week operation. So we have churches that meet in Vistatech as well. So we have a lot of activity there. And I think the traffic study should just reflect that as we move forward. So that's just pieces of information we want to make sure that the commission knows about. So.
Thank you, Mr. Cerny. Is there any questions for Mr. Cerny from Schoolcraft? All right, I don't hear any. Thank you for coming. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak for or against? Feel free to come forward, sir. Hi, good evening.
Good evening. My name is David Fishman, 38701 7 Mile Road in Livonia.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, and good evening. I am the owner of the 7 Mile Crossing project, consisting of the 3 office buildings totaling roughly 330,000 square feet, and also the Andiamo's restaurant, which is across the street. So 4 parcels in total, directly to the south of the egress point or the ingress point where A123 was. And one of the things that we worked on as part of the prior study that led into, I think, the site plan for last year was that we had a problem at 7 Mile in that there were a number of people ingressing and egressing from the college campus that were cutting through our parking lot and running through at very high speeds. And we had people who were injured and hit by a car. And it's a safety and a serious situation. And as a result of that, there was a lot of work that was done in doing a traffic study and getting a traffic signal installed at that intersection of 7 Mile and Chippewa, as it's called, which is that egress and ingress point for the college. And I believe, again, that ties in with the site plan that was approved by the city council. I couldn't agree more. That is a plan A. And we were invited to be a part of that study. It was very successful. The traffic light is very effective. And now all the traffic is channeled in and out of that thoroughfare because it's a multi-lane thoroughfare that did not exist before with that traffic signal. And I'm proud to say that since that time, we have not had any incidents in our parking lot for people cutting through and so forth because they're able to freely flow in and out. Now we have a situation where there's a desire to go with a plan D, I guess this has been described. And in so doing that, it now creates a bit of a bottleneck that, again, raises questions on our side that we would like to see some study for. I did have a chance to look at the traffic study this afternoon, and it does not appear that in addition to the 2 items that Mr. Cerny referred to, that there are specific projects that we know about that have been approved by the city, but they're not reflected in that study, but also the fact that there are protected right turns. And if we add a second traffic light, which is within 50 yards of the existing traffic light, that protected right turn basically is just a bottleneck. And those cars, if you watch at 4:30, 5 o'clock trying to egress, they would stack up within a matter of seconds. You'd have 12, 15 cars just stopped, and then it would back up again on the college side. When that backup happens, people are going to find a way to get out faster. And the way they get out faster is to cut through our parking lot. And again, if that happens, well, then we're back to safety issues because people are trying to find a way to get to the freeway as quickly as they can. And so we're concerned about that second item that Mr. Cerny mentioned. There's two other items I wanted to mention for the purpose of improving the study. One of them is that we do not have a direct line of travel between our complex and our boulevard entrance and the A123 entrance. It's offset. And so if there is a light there, I haven't heard anyone talk about how that would work because, again, it's offset. And so normally you have an intersection, which is a direct intersection, and as it's offset, it's not clear how that would function. And then the final thing has to do with the left turns for traffic going to the westbound on 7 Mile, is that right now, because we do not have a signal, and we have the signal at Chippewa, so people can easily get into our complex. And they have two options to do so. One is there's a very fluid access, is that when the traffic is flowing in green, you'll see people turning left all the time into 7 Mile Crossing, whether they're going to the Andiamos or going to one of the businesses. They also have the option when the traffic light at Chippewa is red, they can quickly pass there. If we put a light there, again, I haven't seen this in the study, what we're going to do is essentially eliminate the opportunity of people easily being fluid to get in, and they're only going to be able to turn left essentially at the traffic light, and that's going to create another backup problem for people going in and out, again, with the additional traffic. So the request that I have for both this forum and the county is just to please, if we could upgrade the study to make sure that it includes these things so that we can take an alternative, which is alternative D, and hopefully make it back to something that's alternative A. I just don't want to go backwards. Hopefully we can progress forward.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Fishman. Do we have any questions for him? I don't see any. Thank you for coming tonight. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this item, for or against? I don't see anyone else coming forward. We'll give the petitioner a chance to come back up and address anything that you've heard, if you would like to. There's been a number of points that have been made about various developments and so on that are in the area that may not have been factored into the study. If you would like to comment on that, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. I'm going to just real quick first let Julie talk specifically about which of those developments were included.
Okay.
So, I was making a list. So the U of M facility was included. That was listed as a show stack facility that was adjacent to the existing U of M. That study was provided to us by Wayne County, and it was performed by Rowe, and that was included as a background condition. The St. Joe's Center, that study was done by WSP, and that study was also provided to us by Wayne County for use as background traffic for this development, so that was included. The stadium, as he pointed out, runs on Saturday and Sunday, so for our purposes for traffic impact study, we're evaluating the impact during the adjacent street peak hours, which are AM and PM. So the Saturday and Sunday traffic associated with the stadium was not part of the scope of work for this study. And as far as the traffic signals, those will accommodate any traffic volumes that are generated during the Saturday, Sunday, and the Schoolcraft weekend operations. The signal upgrades that he mentioned, those were also included in the traffic study. We got that information from Wayne County. The right turn overlap is what he's talking about, the continuous right turn arrow, and the left turn phasing on 7 Mile, that was included in our traffic study, and it is shown in the modeling that what Mark showed for the PM operation. So you can see, and that was something that Wayne County, and we looked at very specifically to see what would be the impact of the right turn overlap phase with the adjacent signal that we're proposing. In addition, the signal that we're proposing at the site drive would improve the operations for the left turn ingress and egress at that driveway at the Andiamas that he was just referring to. Their existing operations are at level service F, and with the addition of a signal there, we operate at Bs. So it did improve existing operations at that location based on our study.
Thank you, Ms. Kroll. We may have some additional questions for you. Is there questions? I think we have Mr. Bonjero, and then we'll have Mr. Long.
Just to clarify, did the study account for Saturday and Sunday?
Study scope will work. For this type of study, we don't look at Saturday and Sunday because we're looking at the impact of the proposed development. I mean, that's the purpose of the study, is what is the impact of the proposed development and how do we mitigate the impact of said development. We know that this development does not peak on Saturday and Sunday. We know that it does peak during the AM and PM peak hours. So that was the focus of our study, is to evaluate the impact of this development, not other developments. I would hope.
So just Monday through Friday?
Yes, just a regular weekday operation. I would hope that the stadium would have done their own study to see what their impact is on a Saturday or Sunday.
Well, because okay, so your facility's open Saturday and Sunday, right?
It is, but the office, and then I'll let Tom speak to the proposed operations.
Okay.
To maybe clarify what the operations are weekday versus weekend.
Because weekends over in that area are gonna be even more busy, because it's when everybody's going to the restaurants and the movies, and you know what I'm saying? So I would think that'd be pretty important to understand that as well, my opinion.
Yeah, so what Beaumont's planning for that facility from an operational perspective is pretty limited in terms of weekend traffic. We will have a freestanding emergency center, which is 24/7, 365. But projections on a center like that, you're talking 30 to 35 cars over a 24-hour period. So it's not something that would necessarily have a great impact, which is why we really focused on Monday through Friday, which is where the significant traffic problems exist there today. I think, I do think that Mr. Cernow and Fishman made valid points. I think that, as Julie mentioned, we did try to take as much of what we could in consideration as possible, at least what's available to us, both publicly and through Wayne County, based on previous traffic studies. And I think, again, the most important thing from my perspective to realize is that traffic in that area is tough today. We all know that. It's gonna get worse with all of the incoming developments. By us coming in and really working with MDOT to upgrade the signals at I-275 and 7 Mile, to upgrade the existing signals in front of the movie theater so that these things are really talking to each other, is going to actually improve status quo. I can't emphasize that point enough.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonjero. Mr. Long?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tormino, could you bring back the moving video, the moving simulation that we had? There was some, I guess, discrepancies. Mr. Cerny said that we couldn't see the left turns and the right turns happening, and Ms. Kroll said that they were accounted for. So I guess want to see for ourselves here, to the extent possible.
I think what we're focusing on is this left turn right there, that's showing how it operates.
Yeah. I'm sure that's probably hard for our vast television audience. It's hard for me just being this far away. So, I mean, we are seeing the cars turn right there, right?
Right here, yes.
Yeah, right there. I don't know if I've seen anybody turn left yet, but. And then, Ms. Kroll, while we're kind of looking at that, Mr. Fishman mentioned the fact that the intersection would be slightly offset with the current.
I'll let Brian speak to the offset intersection.
Yeah, I want to understand how how the signalization, how that's going to work.
Yeah, so to be completely honest, it's somewhat new information to me. I don't know how offset they are. I think we would need our architects to really study that, but certainly want to solve for it. makes sense that they would line up. And if our current site plan does not do that today, but I believe that it does. Kendall, do you? I'm gonna, our architect is here, so I'm gonna let him speak a little bit on this, but I'm fairly certain they line up pretty well.
Kendall Ruberg with HKS, 125 East Main Street, Northville. I'm not a civil engineer, but I can't even argue that I stayed at Holiday Inn last night. But yes, in terms of the architectural, I think if you have a site plan that's put up for us in terms of existing condition, I think as Brian mentioned, we'd be certainly interested if that becomes a stumbling block for the community in terms of solving. It would be important for all of us to take a look at that in terms of making sure that we propose something that's going to work in all situations. So if you have a plan that actually shows that area, I don't know if we've got one that
I might have to go, yeah,
goes
this
back
is
far enough.
probably the best
best one,
thing I'm
yeah.
gonna be able to
Yeah,
depict right now.
It's close.
yeah, in terms of an existing condition, they're close, but they're off. Thank you, Ben.
A fellow architect to the rescue.
They are versatile, if nothing else. Yeah, it's very close.
So we believe that this is solvable, whether it's just positioning the signal correctly or perhaps whatever, widening the driveway or moving the driveway a little bit, or there's a solution to this offset. Is that's what I'm looking for somebody to respond to.
And maybe Ms. Kroll can respond to that. I'm guessing when the final engineering is done for installation of the signal, the box span and everything else, Julie, aren't they looking at the alignment of the driveways? And if there needs to be some geometric changes, that's something that would be reviewed and determined as part of that final engineering
Yeah.
review by the county?
Right, it will be, it's part of our permit application, so they're gonna wanna see that driveway, I mean, like, right now, it's just in a preliminary state, we don't have full engineering drawings, so once we get those drawn, we'll have the right radiuses, the right tapers, we'll have the signal laid out on there, so they can see it all together, and then they'll issue a permit for it, so they're not gonna issue a permit for anything that's not in accordance with their requirements.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Looking at Google Maps, it looks like the east end of the drives, north and south of 7 Mile, are pretty much in line with each other. The west end is offset because the entrance into the 7 Mile crossing is a boulevarded entrance, so it's wider than the entrance into the new Beaumont property. But it's quite close. Any other questions for our petitioner? No other questions, and no one else in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Mr. Cerny, we'll let you have one more comment.
I just want to make sure, because when we were looking at the traffic study that Mark had given us, the show staff office building is actually the Cooper Standard building. So I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at it, and it's where the Cooper Standard building is, so I don't see how U of M got put in there. So I just want to make sure it's a point of clarification. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. If there's no other comments or questions, we will look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Long.
I'd like to offer an approving resolution.
Okay.
That the request to revise the site plan for the construction of a professional medical office building located at 39,000 7 Mile Road is hereby approved, subject to the following conditions. Number one, the overall site plan identified as sheet C2.10 dated December 19th, 2019, as revised, prepared by HKS Architects, is hereby approved and shall be adhered to. Number two, that the landscaping plan identified as sheet L1.10 dated December 19th, 2019, as revised, prepared by HKS Architects, is hereby approved and shall be adhered to. Number three, approval is granted by Wayne County DPS and the Michigan Department of Transportation for the installation of traffic improvements as outlined in Table E4, entitled Future Adjacent Intersection Improvements, provided on page 8 of the executive summary of the Beaumont-Livonia Traffic Impact Study dated January 21st, 2020, as revised, prepared by Fleiss and Vanderbrink. Number 4, that the specific plans referenced in this approving resolution shall be submitted to the inspection department at the time the building permits are applied for. And number 5, that all other conditions imposed by council resolution number 262-19, which granted approval for the construction of a professional / medical office building, shall remain in effect to the extent that they are not in conflict with the foregoing conditions.
Is there support?
Support.
All right, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Long, supported by Mrs. McHugh. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Ian?
Yes, Mr. Bonjero.
So with the, with Mr. Fishman and Mr. Cerny's concerns, are we, number 3, I guess, would be covered by number 3 with Wayne County, right? They're gonna look out for the offset intersection. I mean, we're gonna assume that that's what they're gonna do for their plan review, and
What the number 3 is in the approving resolution, and Mr. Tormina can correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically stating that that this approval is conditioned upon Wayne County approving the traffic improvements. If for some reason this gets derailed at Wayne County, then this approval is no longer valid. Is that correct, Mr. Tormina?
That is correct, but to Chairman Bonjero's point, are you saying that verification through the final analysis by the county should include any other items that are missing from that traffic study in terms of what would add?
yeah, I kinda think that we should have that.
Generate additional traffic like the U of M, if that was a piece that was left off, and if that data is available, that should be included in the report. That would require some additional language to the approving resolution. We're happy to, prepare that as part of the resolution that will be presented to City Council.
Mr. Bonjero, if you want to offer, or if you're offering that as a suggestion to add to the approving resolution, I think that would be a reasonable request.
Yeah, I would like to add that to it.
Okay, let's ask the maker and the supporter if they agree.
I would so allow.
All right, Ms. McHugh?
Myself as well.
All right, so we will add language to the approving resolution to ensure that those additional locations have been referenced in those studies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonjero. Any other questions on the motion? If not, then if the secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Ms. McHugh?
Aye.
Mr. Bonjero?
Aye.
Carabagna votes aye. Chairman Wilshaw.
Votes aye, motion passes. We'll go on to City Council. And thank you and good luck with that project. We do appreciate everyone who came tonight to speak on this issue. It's a very important project in the community, and it's an important area with a lot of moving parts, so we're glad that there's so much interest. With that, we'll go on to item 3 on our agenda.
And that is petition 2017-09-02-12, submitted by Tissio Architects, Inc., requesting a 1-year extension of the plans in connection with the proposal to develop and operate an outdoor storage yard for recreational equipment at 12350 Merriman Road, located on the east side of Merriman Road between Plymouth Road and the CSX Railroad, right away in the southwest quarter of Section 26.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Tormina?
And, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'd like to address the next 2 items together, since they are related and involve the same property. So this is a request for a second 1-year extension to a site plan involving the development and operation of an outdoor storage yard. This would be for both recreational equipment as well as a contractor's yard. There's 2 petitions. One involved the contractor's yard, the other one the recreational equipment. They've been reviewed the past couple of years together as a single site plan, but technically they required separate petitions. Council originally granted approval back on December 18th of 2017. Then an extension was granted, I believe, last January. There's been no change to the plans as they were originally approved, and I think the petitioner is here to indicate what the plans are moving forward. And I'll be happy to read out we do have two items of updated correspondence. One is a letter dated January 14th from our Department of Finance indicating that they have no objections as there are no outstanding amounts receivable, general and water, and that letter is signed by Connie Kumpela, Chief Accountant for the city. And then the Treasurer's Office in an updated letter dated January 20th of this year indicates that at this time, all past due and current due taxes have been paid, and therefore they have no objections to the proposal. And that letter is signed by Linda Shield, Treasurer of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toromina. Any questions for our planning staff? If not, Mr. Tissio is here. Good evening, sir.
Bonus aid, Ben Tissio, Tissio Architects, 19815 Farmington Road. Excuse me, I have two actually updates on the property. One is, a short while ago, we received the lot split information approval from DTE. So we have a different address for the rear 4 acres of this outdoor storage facility. The address is going to be 12330 Middle Belt. The 12350 is reserved for, I believe, the acre and a half in front that has the building. So we actually have a lot split now that was approved by DTE about a month or so ago. And secondly, I'm pleased to update, I had a meeting and discussion with the owner today, and he believes he is going to be set to rock and roll here in a couple, 3 months. So as soon as we can get the weather to break, it looks like he's resolved his financing issues, and we will be moving forward as soon as the weather permits. So we greatly appreciate the extension. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tissio. And just to make sure I had that right, you said the address of record should be 12330 Merriman?
That's Middle Belt. I'm sorry, Merriman, excuse me, yes.
Let's get the right street.
Yes, street.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Tissio? I don't see any questions for you. I don't see anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against this item coming forward. So with that, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Bonjero.
I'd like to offer an approving resolution that the
Yes.
request for a one-year extension of the plans approved in connection with a proposal to develop and operate an outdoor storage yard for recreational equipment at 12350 Merriman Road is hereby approved, subject to the city council approval and the following conditions. One, that the request for a one-year extension of waiver use approval by Tissio Architects, Inc. on behalf of More Outside Storage in a letter dated January 6, 2020 is hereby approved. And two, that all conditions imposed by council resolutions number 413-17 and number 414-7 in connection with petition 2017-09-02-12 shall remain in effect to the extent that they are not in conflict with the foregoing condition.
Is there support?
Support.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Bonjero, supported by Mrs. McHugh. I believe, Mr. Toromina, you can update the address in that approving resolution to 12330 instead of 12350, as indicated by Mr. Tissio for that property. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, if the secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mr. Bonjero?
Aye.
Mrs. McHugh?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Chair Magna votes aye. Chairman Wilshaw?
Votes aye, motion passes. And we have a companion item on our agenda, item number 4, which is for the same property, but slightly different.
Yep. Petition 2017-09-02-13, submitted again by Tissio Architect, Inc., requesting a one-year extension of the plans in connection with a proposal to develop and operate an outdoor storage yard for special trade contractors at 12350 or 330, located on the east side of Merriman between Plymouth Road and the CSX Railroad, right away in the southwest quarter of Section 26.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And Mr. Toromina already gave us background on this. Just for the sake of explaining why there's two petitions, there's different rules for outdoor storage of recreational equipment versus special trade contractors, which is why this is broken into two different petitions. Mr. Tissio is still here. I don't think he's got any additional information on this item. He indicates no additional, all right, he indicates no additional information. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this? No one coming forward. Is there any discussion or a motion would be in order?
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. McHugh.
I'd like to offer an approving resolution that the request for a one-year extension of the plans approved in connection with the proposal to develop and operate an outdoor storage yard for special trade contractors at 12350 Merriman Road is hereby approved, subject to city council approval and the following conditions. That the request for a one-year extension of waiver use approval by Tizio Architects, Inc. on behalf of More Outside Storage in a letter dated January 6, 2020 is hereby approved, and that all conditions imposed by the council resolutions number 415 through 17 and 416 and 17 in connection with the petition 2017-9-02-13 shall remain in effect to the extent that they are not in conflict with the foregoing condition.
Is there support?
Support.
I heard Mr. Bonjero first, so we will go with a motion to approve by Mrs. McHugh, supported by Mr. Bonjero. If there's any discussion on this?
Address correction.
Yes, let's note the address correction on this one as well.
Absolutely, thank you.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Long. If there's no additional item of discussion, then secretary can please call the roll.
Mrs. McHugh.
Aye.
Mr. Bonjero.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Caremagna votes aye. Chairman Wilshaw.
Votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Tissio, for coming. Wish you a good night. And we'll go on to the pending items section of our agenda.
Petition 2019-12-08-16 submitted by NC Designers and Contracting, Inc., requesting approval of all plans required by Section 18.58 of the City of Livonia zoning ordinance number 543 as amended regarding a proposal to construct an addition and remodel the interior and exterior of the existing gas station, Shell gas station, at 33411 6 Mile Road, located on the southwest corner of 6 Mile and Farmington Roads in the northeast quarter of Section 16.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. This item was tabled at our last meeting. Is there a motion to remove this item from the table?
So moved.
By Mr. Long, supported by
Support.
Mrs. McHugh. And if there's no objection, we can show 5 to remove this item from the table. And there's no objections, so we can now discuss this. Mr. Tormina.
Thank you. This pending item, which involves an addition and other site modifications to the Shell gas station located at 6 Mile and Farmington Roads, was tabled at the Planning Commission's January 14th meeting in order to allow the petitioner to make some additional changes. We do have new information, and it includes, first of all, a revised site plan, which is shown here. This shows the location of the mechanical equipment behind the building, as well as the dimensioned setback of the addition from 6 Mile Road. It's shown to be 36 feet 7 inches at the closest point. Also provided is a fully detailed landscape plan that shows a variety of new shrubs and trees throughout the site, including areas within the rights-of-way of the roads, at the corners of the site, as well as along portions of the west property line. And lastly, revised elevation plans, including a rendering which is shown here. This shows the limestone panels extending along the base of the north and south elevations of the building, as well as an additional window along the north elevation. I guess lastly, the only item that was also discussed was the provision for free air, and apparently the petitioner demonstrated at the study meeting that he has taken care of that and added that as part of the current operation.
Thank you, Mr. Toromina. Any questions for our planning staff? I don't see any. Our petitioner is here. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Nasser.
Hi.
We do ask your name and address for the record.
Nasser Shukir from NC Designers, 3241 South Telegraph, Dearborn, 48124.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Termina explained what we're doing and what we adjusted. I just want to add that we did add the window, but we're not sure either it's going to be a window or a fake window. We'll determine that upon what it's going to be what we're gonna be doing in that corner. Probably the owner, I mean, he wanna put some shelvings, then it would be a fake. If not, then it would be a regular window to get, I mean, light in there. And other than that, I mean, we adjusted all the issues that we had previously, and I hope we'll get an approval tonight.
All right, thank you very much, sir. And we also have the building, or the property owner, Mr. Hamouche, here as well, correct?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Ali Hamouche, 33411 6 Mile Road, Livonia, Michigan, 48152, owner of the Shell gas station.
All right, anything else that you wanted to add to what you've
No,
heard?
obviously, thank you so much for looking into this, and hopefully it pass, as Nasser said.
All right, very good, thank you, sir. Any questions for our petitioner tonight? Mr. Bonjero?
Nasser, you're coming out 20 feet with the building addition, right?
Yes.
Because on the plan it shows 18.9, but that's inside dimensions, so I'm just rounding off 20 feet. Is the pole on that west line, is that the property line? There's a telephone pole in the back, southwest corner. There's a telephone pole. I was out there just trying to find.
Okay.
And I mean, I love the plan. It looks good. I'm just clarifying. Is that telephone pole on the lot line? Is that what we're calling the lot line? Because I couldn't tell.
Not really, not necessarily. Normally, light poles or electrical poles can be in the property, but of course there is a written and legal description with an easement waived for DTE or Comcast or any of these utility. So whenever you have a light pole or an easement, of course you cannot put any fixed structure on it. But if there isn't, then you are allowed. And where we're putting our addition, I don't think we have any additions, or I mean any easements in that area.
No. What I meant was, I was trying to figure out where the lot line is.
Oh, the lot line, the lot line, it would be where.
That telephone pole is, I was thinking. Plus or minus, just, anyway.
Yeah,
so-
I mean, but I can say that the asphalt, where the asphalt is the asphalt line is along the property.
lot line.
Probably that's the lot line, but probably sometimes people like encourage into other properties. If you put the iron from one side to another, then you can hit really a straight line.
The only reason I'm asking is because I know you're gonna have to go to ZBA, so.
Yeah.
You're gonna need an actual survey.
Actually, we're gonna get our surveyor over there to put the pins on the property
Yeah.
and show exactly where it's gonna be.
But the reason I'm bringing it up is because I was out there and I wheeled it off, and I was trying to figure out where your building line was. And you've got, running my eye off the side of the building, and I wheeled it out on the west lot line. It looks like you got 23 feet from the corner to the lot line, and you're only coming out 20. So all I'm saying is you might not have to clip the corner of the building. You're showing-
Go
And you
all
might
the
not
way
need as much
in.
of a variance if you have an accurate survey. That's
True.
why it'd be nice to see it. So you
True.
can
In the
refer to
back,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, it might not be as much as you think.
I will always wanna take precautions.
Yeah. But I
Because
mean,
they're
that was
gonna come back and throw it on me, so.
Yeah,
I
I
always
mean-
take precaution, but when we come down to it, like, we wanna,
You're gonna
make
need
a real setback. I just wanna, this meeting is to get the approval that we are allowed to do something like this. Then the next step, it would be more detailed, and engineering would be involved, and surveys would be involved.
Okay.
More precise than the mortgage survey or the plot survey that the owner provided me.
Okay, and then just one last question, and I'm done. I know you were having a meeting with the neighbor about possibly doing maybe a business. Anything come to
No, I
light?
did not have the chance to. I was super busy this week, but definitely, I think by the end of this week, I'm gonna call them up and actually schedule a meeting with them.
But you're going full bore on this.
Mr. Hamouche, just, that way our TV audience can hear you
Sorry.
as well.
So the question was if I had any meeting with the potential buyer. I'm not sure if he bought that plaza behind me or not. Yes, I will schedule by the end of this week something with him in order to talk about what the development he's gonna have behind my property. But unfortunately, this week didn't happen because I was super busy with some other schedules and commitment.
Okay, I just wondered, you're just going full bore with this. This plan here is one you're going for.
Okay.
As of right now, that's what you're.
Yes, as of now, we're going full blown with this one.
Okay.
Making sure.
Okay,
I mean, whatever it takes, I'm gonna change that building, you know?
Yeah.
If you
No,
tell
I'm
me,
good. I'm good.
take
Yeah.
it. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonjero. Any other questions for our petitioner? I don't hear any other questions. There's no one else in the audience to speak for or against this item, so if there's no other discussion, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. McHugh,
I'd like to offer an approving resolution.
you picked the long one.
I know I did. I was waiting. That the request to construct an addition and remodel the interior and exterior of the existing gas station Shell at 33411 6 Mile is hereby approved, subject to city council approval and the following conditions. Number one, the site plan identified as sheet SP-2 dated January 21st, 2020, as revised, prepared by NC Designers and Contracting, Inc., is hereby approved and shall be adhered to. Number two, this approval is subject to the petitioner being granted variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals for building setback and parking deficiencies. Number three, all parking spaces except the required barrier-free parking shall be striped at 10 feet wide by 20 feet in length as required, and the number and location of the barrier-free parking spaces shall be provided at the direction of the inspection department. Number four, the landscape plan identified as sheet LP-1 dated January 18th, 2020, as revised, prepared by Nagy Devlin Land Design LLC, is hereby approved and shall be adhered to. Number five, all disturbed lawn areas, including road right-of-ways, shall be sodded in lieu of hydro seeding. Number six, underground sprinklers are to be provided for all landscaped and sodded areas, including the right-of-way, and the planted materials shall be installed to the satisfaction of the inspection department and thereafter permanently maintained in healthy condition. The exterior building elevation plans showing the west and east elevations identified as A2 dated December 11th, 2019, prepared by NC Designers and Contracting, Inc., is hereby approved and shall be adhered to. Number five, the exterior building elevation plan showing the north and south elevations identified as A3 dated January 21st, 2020, is revised, prepared by NC Designers and Contracting, Inc., is hereby approved and shall be adhered to. All roof-mounted mechanical equipment shall be concealed from public view on all sides, the parapet walls of the building, and all ground-mounted equipment shall be concealed with the use of masonry screen walls as approved by the inspection department. Any new light fixture shall not exceed the height of 20 feet from grade at the base of the light and shall be aimed and shielded to minimize stray light trespassing across property lines or on adjacent roadways. Excuse me. Number 11, no outside storage, placement, or display of merchandise shall be permitted, except this condition shall not apply to the display on the pump islands only of products pursuant to section 11-03A12 of the zoning ordinance. Number 12, pursuant to section 11.03A13, free air shall be provided and dispensed at the point of service without having to enter the station or perform any extra action to obtain the air without charge. Number 13, vacuum equipment or the outdoor placement, storage of propane cylinder storage units is not allowed. Number 14, the sale of ice shall be restricted to the inside of the building. Number 15, only conforming signs are approved as part of this petition, and any additional signs shall be separately submitted for review and approval by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Number 16, no part of the pump island canopy fascia, except for the signage, shall be illuminated, and no LED light band or exposed neon is allowed on any part of the building, including around the windows or on the overhead canopies. Unless approved by the proper local authority, any type of exterior advertising such as promotional flags, streamers, or sponsor vehicles designed to attract the attention of passing motorists shall be prohibited. Number 18, the specific plans referenced in this approving resolution shall be submitted to the inspection department at the time the building permits are applied for. And number 19, pursuant to section 19.10 of ordinance number 543, the zoning ordinance of the city of Livonia, this approval is valid for a period of 1 year only from the date of approval by city council, and unless a building permit is obtained, this approval shall be null and void at the expiration of said period.
Is there support?
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. McHugh, supported by Mr. Long to approve. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Mark, did this plan include that window?
No, if we could, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Caremagno, if we could modify conditions number 7 and 8 to reflect the addition of either a window or a false window on the north elevation of the building.
That's fine.
All right, and Mr. Long, you're okay with that? All right. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, if the secretary's ready, call the roll.
Mrs. McHugh.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Bonjero.
Aye.
Caremagna votes aye. Chairman Wilshaw.
Votes aye, motion passes. We'll go on to City Council with an approving recommendation. Wish you luck with your project. Thank you for coming, and thank you for working with us on this. Thank you. I think it'll be a nice addition. All right, and that takes us to one last item on our agenda.
That is the approval of the minutes of the 1,153rd public hearing and regular meeting held by the Planning Commission on July 14th, 2020.
All members of the commission were present with the exception of Mrs. McHugh. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
By Mr. Caremagno, supported by
Support.
Mr. Long. And if there is no objections, I think we can show 4 to approve, actually, yes, we can show 4 to approve that with Mrs. McHugh abstaining. So, thank you, Mr. Long, for being here. Otherwise, we wouldn't have our minutes approved. That does take us to the end of our agenda tonight. Is there any other business to come before the Planning Commission? Hearing none, a adjourning motion would be in order.
Go ahead.
Make a motion.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Bonjero,
Support.
supported by Mr. Long. Again, if there's no objections, I think we can show 5 to adjourn. All right, we have the adjourning motion shown at 8:27 p.m. This does conclude our meeting this evening. I do wish to thank Livonia Television staff for their contribution, and with no further business, we will adjourn the meeting at 8:27 p.m. Good night, Livonia.